gather together this morning, let us just relax. Forget about anything that troubled us through the week. And just remember the truth of who we are, Spirit, Christ within. From that place of stillness, let us lift up all of the prayers that are in this box and all of the prayers that have gone unspoken and unwritten for fulfillment to the highest good of all. From this Spirit we say thank you, and so it is. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. Rebecca will now read the daily word.
This is about forgiveness. And we are having a forgiveness circle once a month for those who are interested. I think it's in the bulletin. As I forgive others, I am centered in peace. When Jesus taught his disciples the importance of forgiveness, he was not speaking of a mere moral imperative, but of a practical spiritual guide. When I hold on to attitudes of anger, judgment, and blame and resentment toward others, I am weighing down my own consciousness and blocking the free flow of divine energy within me and through me. As I choose to forgive, I dissolve the blockage within. Certainly, my choice for forgiveness will have a positive impact on those I forgive, whether or not they consciously recognize and accept it. But I am powerless over others' choices. I am simply left with the opportunity to feel lighter and more loving as I forgive. Truly, as I forgive others, I am centered in peace. Jesus said, "Forgive not 7 times, but I tell you, 77 times."
Thank you. Let us prepare ourselves to say together our sacred Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Let us move even deeper into that place and allow the words that we actually have above our heads on the rafters. Be still and know I am God. So breathe into that. Be still. Speak those words within yourself. Be still. Be still and know deep within you these words, I am God. I am Spirit. I am one with all that is. As I breathe in stillness knowingness. And allowing that awareness, inviting that awareness, accepting that awareness. I am one. In this oneness, I am open to divine ideas. What is mine to do? In this awareness that I am one, I reach out. I reach out naturally to those that I love and care about. I lift them. Just lift them, knowing that we are connected at spirit. I hold that spirit energy within them. It's easy to do that for those that we love. But then let's reach out wider and further to those we don't care about, to those we don't like, to those we are in fear of, to those we are angry with. We are one with all. And as we are that awareness of that divine love flowing in and through us, flowing in and through them, we hold that. And as we have expanded this awareness, let us move it then deep into be still and know. In the silence, we know. And gently bring yourself to the edge, just to the edge of that stillness. And allow any specific concerns that may be yours. Just allow them. Open to that divine mind. let go of whatever conceptions you have of how this needs to be handled, and allow that love and intelligence and imagination, the wisdom, to infuse all situations that are yours to be aware of. And we invite that divine intelligence to be our intelligence as we will be moving back into our personality to say, yes, I am aware, I am both the individuation of that divine and this human person operating in the physical world. I invite that divine energy. My life grows and expands. The love and the delight and the joy infuse me, infuse every cell of my body. Breathe into that joy infusing my cells, yes. Joy infusing my consciousness. Joy radiating out from me, through me. And we say, thank you. And so it is. Amen. Amen. Yeah, breathe into that joy radiating out in and through me. What does that feel like? You know? Getting into our feelings. As you know, I'm a person who's really about getting to the root of things, and it is our feelings. You know, what is it that means prosperity? So we've just started a new prosperity book downstairs, Eric Butterworth's Spiritual Economics, and the idea of what that means. What is true prosperity? And so one of the things about prosperity and all the other things in our world are this power of symbol. And you know, last week I really talked about virtual reality. And I don't know about you, whether any of you have had this experience, but ever since I began planning for that talk, so this has been 2 or 3 weeks now, I've really been aware of the virtual reality that I live in, that other people live in, and as we listen to words, and our class downstairs is a wonderful place to see that as people, so we're reading somebody else's words that are in a book, and then we look at these words, and how many of us interpret these words in various ways, and we express that, and you know, we look at each other and go, wow, that's not how I look at it. So to become so aware of our creative process that's flowing through us by this power symbology of words. And that is our way of communicating, but to open ourselves to that process and to think about how do our words expand us and how do they fence us in. So as we were looking at this whole process of virtual reality and symbolism, so we also talked about the word paranormal. And I've been thinking about that. What is paranormal? Well, you can say somebody who's psychic is paranormal. You know, somebody, well, how is that different from somebody who has a gift of being able to play the piano? You know, people come with some of these gifts. You know, they learn how to make use of these gifts in different ways, but they came here with the gift of being able to play a musical instrument. Or a couple of my grandkids, they could pick up any instrument there was and be able to play it. And I just heard somebody the other day was talking about one of their kids or grandkids, and was saying that they moved from one of the horns, and I don't know enough about musical instruments, they moved from one of the horns to something else because the horn they had learned only had 4 notes. And they said, but that's so boring. They wanted something that was a lot more complex than those 4 notes. Hey, you give me 4 notes, you know. I say, we come with these gifts. So the gifts the things that we look out there and say are paranormal are saying, you know, I wonder if I can begin to expand my awareness so that I can begin maybe to see those energy levels, to know something that maybe is beyond it. And I don't know, don't seem to be as popular now, but a few years ago, the idea of really knowing who was calling when the telephone rang, and I've heard several couples have been together for a long time, is, you know, if I'm out, whichever one, husband or wife, I've heard both men and women say this, okay, before I get ready to go home, I'll just sit quiet for a moment and I will ask, is there anything I'm supposed to be bringing home? They're not calling on the telephone, they're just sitting and asking and paying attention, and guess what? They go to the store, they show up with whatever it is. You know, so we begin to expand. So in this virtual reality, what's the gift of virtual reality? We are the creators. Who creates this? Who creates this? And then the idea of meditation is to be able to get down to what is real reality. What is the ground? What is the ground of being? And so in Unity language, we call this invisible stuff, we call it substance. We call it divine substance. We call it God, though. I tell you what, with all of our discussions, I really want to be letting go of the word God. You want it? You want it? Here's a virtual reality and what that means. So beginning to look at what does that mean, what is the universe, not the universe that we can look out there and see the stars and the galaxies and the people say, there's multiple universes. You know, the universe encompasses all of that. And to say, okay, this is what we are one with. How can we not be? How can we be separate from all that is? And, you know, when you really think about it, it makes common sense. Nothing in this universe can be separated from anything else in this universe. So, as we begin to have an inkling of what this process is, and I know I bring it up fairly frequently because I've actually been hearing about it fairly frequently, so just the other day again, you know, what we can see here, what we can feel, what we can touch, what we can know about each other, what we can smell, is such a tiny fraction of what is. Now, the scientists who go out there and they, you know, the physicists and all of these things, and they've got all these four-letter words that they make up for all these energy particles, and all, you know, they see, or at least with instruments, they see, and it's only 4% of all that is. So what am I experiencing? You know, if the physicists, and they have come to this conclusion, 4%. So what is the rest of it? You know, you think it's substance? It's substance, and it's there, and it's plastic, and it's, you know, it can be used. We can use it. What is the point of all of this process? So how do we use this substance? And so reading Eric Butterworth kind of encouraged me in my own growing understanding. We make use of, create, develop with faith. Now, when I say the word faith, what comes up? So what is your virtual reality of the word faith? Okay, you know, it's little faith in God, faith in Jesus, faith in, or faith in my parents, faith that I'm loved, faith. We have faith in things. But how about if we, and this is not to take away from that use of faith. Yes, we want to have faith and trust in our friends, so that faith and trust and belief in. But let's expand it and see faith as a tool. Think about that. So faith as a tool, what do I believe and understand about this process of substance and how it is molded. And if we can begin to think of our faith, you know, I don't know how many people here, I know we've got people who are not here today who do a lot with clay and pottery, and so when you're doing that, you know, you have various tools and you carve the clay and you mold it. So if we think of faith as one of these kinds of tools and the substance as the clay, and you know, what is that song? And I think it comes from a Bible verse about thou art the potter, I am the clay. How about I am the potter and all this out here is the clay, and this divine awareness gives me the tools to mold that clay. So here's a quote from Eric Butterworth. God's substance, so God's substance, is an ever-present creative resource which must flow forth when I create the conditions that make the result inevitable. I create the conditions that make the result inevitable. In other words, I as a human being, not even knowing, I'm doing, believing, acting in a way that there can be no other result from that particular set of actions. Faith is not a vague process of believing in something. It is rather a positive act of turning on something. I really like that, turning on something. My faith is consciousness centered in the universal source. So universal source. Lot more letters than saying the word God, but universal source. My faith simply tunes into and turns on the divine flow that has always been present. So think about those words. Simply tunes in. Not with great effort, but tunes in very simply and turns on the divine flow that has always, never not been present. I am God's living enterprise. I am unique. I am a unique individualization of the universal creative spirit. I can because I am, with the I am capitalized. You know, looking at that quote, be still and know I am universal source. I am universal source. So think about, what does that feel like inside of you to say, I am universal source? Believe that you are always in the presence of limitless substance, which you form and shape and release through your faith. And Jim Freeman, years ago, I got to sit in a prosperity class with him, and he said, we don't know what we believe until it's challenged. So how we are creating our life through our faith and belief, a lot of times we're not even aware of that because we don't know until something comes up and faces us to go, oh, well, that can't be true, or I can't do that, and you begin to say, oh, that's what I believe. That's what I believe. Keep the high watch of truth by knowing that wherever you are and whatever your experience, you are an inlet and an outlet for the flow of God's substance. An inlet and an outlet. So as we begin to think about that process, and unity tends to be very individually centered. You know, and it came up in class, you know, it seems very me-centered. And yet, can I increase the inlet and outflow of the divine in Amy? Can't do anything. But what happens when I increase that inlet and outflow of me, and I can share that with other people? Now, I tell somebody, and I've actually, and maybe probably many of you have too over the years, I've heard somebody teaching how wonderful something is, and you can tell by looking at them, or maybe even things that they share, they don't have a clue. They haven't experienced that. They're trying to teach you and tell you to do something that they don't have a clue of what that means. You know, so you begin to become aware of why is it important that I have this flow and experience. So in John 16:33, Jesus says, I have overcome the world. Now, traditional Christianity interprets it as Jesus Christ, an entity, God, saying that he is different and above the world. But this is not how we look at it. So that Christ, I have overcome the world. So the world is this that I can see and touch. I can see and touch. The world is my virtual reality. So if I have overcome the world of virtual reality, means I live in this world of virtual reality, but I also have the experience of that underlying substance that is. So I'm living in both at the same time. It's not an either or, it's a both and. We are human beings. We live in this world of virtual reality. And what we're really trying to understand about ourselves, we also live in this underlying reality of substance, of laws that operate in that. These laws don't care whether we know about them. You know, these laws are, it's, you know, the easiest one is the law of gravity. Law of gravity does not care whether you believe it. Absolutely, doesn't care. You do something that's against it, and you're flat on your face. You know, so to be aware that we live in this other reality, the basis of reality. The universe of substance, so the substance, and that means to stand under. So a lot of times we think, well, this is a substance, it's wood, wood is a substance. But when we're using it in that underlying 96% of what nobody knows what it is, but is useful, and we use it. The universe of substance, the creative realness, is concurrent with this physical world. Not separate, not a place we go to. It is a reality we expand into. So when we're doing the meditation process, it is a release and a relaxing and allowing ourselves to move into a place that is already there. Because our conscious reality is what creates the barriers and keeps me trapped in this virtual reality. Faith equals consciousness centered in universal source. Faith turns into and turns on. So keep those words. Tunes into and turns on the divine flow that is always present. So hopefully you can walk away with that phrase. Faith tunes into and turns on the divine flow. So think about somebody who lives in the third world, and they live in a place that there is electricity available in public buildings, and there's a water pump, but they go to the water pump and the pump is on, or somebody turns it on, or they have to do this to do this. They go into public buildings, the lights are on, so they know they have an experience of this, and then you take them and put them, and here's your new house, and guess what? You can have light, and you can turn on this little thing, and there's water available. You know, you have light, all of this light, and look, see that little white switch? All you have to do is do that. Now, if you've never had that experience, what might you be thinking? How can all of this light come with just that little bitty switch? And how can a flow of water that I've had to do this happen by turning on this little thing? You know, you might be making a fool out of me too. I want to see if I can get you to do that and see what happens. Then what happens if I convince you to do that and the light bulbs burn out? Oh, this stuff doesn't work. Have we ever been there? You know, so we begin to look at this as saying, okay, what we're learning how to do is, is turn that switch on because it's there. And as we're learning, as we're practicing, there are things that get in the way. I can turn on the water faucet and somebody has had a problem down there and there's no water comes out. And the interpretation, if I don't know, is somebody sold me a bill of goods. So as we begin to practice that and say, okay, what am I willing to believe? How am I willing to operate this? And if it didn't work the first time, well, however many of us have learned, well, one example, so I took in my master's degree, so it was a class on behavioral psychology, and most of us in there had been out working in the world and everything, and our first couple of classes, we got the books, and that teacher is talking Greek, I swear to you, and we go out on break and go, we're never going to get this, we don't understand the language. I don't know, the third or fourth class in, we had some guest speakers that came who had been practitioners out there, and we sat there and we were just, really eating it up, and when we went on break, we all looked at each other and said, we understood every word. We knew exactly what she's talking about. We had to learn. There was a process that said, yes, you develop, you grow in this process. You think about Jesus' temptations in the wilderness. So he goes out there and he's all by himself and he's hungry and he's thirsty and who knows, or maybe not. But what he gets is this temptation, okay? Look at these rocks. You can turn these rocks into bread. What did he say? Mankind, people do not live by bread alone. I'm not going to let you tempt me into turning something into, and we can actually look at that as material wealth. There is more to this process. And then, Satan takes him up and shows him, says, you got all this power. You got all this power. No, I know where the real power is. And then Satan takes him and says, well, just throw yourself off this cliff. God's angels will come and hold you up. And what does Jesus say? Not to tempt God. And as I interpret, particularly that one, how many stories do we hear of somebody being in a dire situation and they lift up the back end of a car? Or they jump over something. They run into a burning building and they come out with whatever. To say there is that force and power within us, but don't do it like, well, let me see. Let me see if I can go pick this car up. That there is a way of tapping into this, and I think those emergency things give us kind of an example of it doesn't matter. It's got to be there, and it will be there. And it happens so fast, you never even think about that process. So, where do we find His kingdom? We do this, we begin the service with that idea of quiet mind. The be still and know. That taking us to that ground of being, that we let go of all of our beliefs and conceptions, because no matter what they are, they're still virtual reality. And the goal of going into that silence to the best that we can is to let go of all of those constrictions. Now the other thing is, as you slow down, as your thoughts slow down, this divine infinity doesn't wait on somebody being quiet for 30 seconds, a minute, an hour. As we slow our thoughts down, we allow room for that divine substance and awareness. So this idea that you, I, are the substance and power expressing in the visible world. When we look at all of creation out here, so we see what was put into being at the beginning of the world, how the whole natural process flows. As human beings, we interrupt that. As human beings, we develop it. But human beings can walk away and it will go on and do what it's going to do. But then you look at all of this stuff. Okay, none of this would be here without human beings. Now you can step back and say, well, wouldn't that be a good thing? Or you can say, oh, this amazing creative process, that this divine intelligence is a creative energy that, I hate to use the word wants because that sounds like a human, but this is what creative energy does. It keeps creating, and we are uniquely created, and I don't think we're an accident. We won't even go there for this talk, but we are uniquely able to create things that have never been by combining things that are, and do that, and to appreciate that. And, you know, our faith doesn't change things. It changes our relationship to things. So my faith in what this is made of is not going to change what this is, but it will change my relationship to it so that I operate in a very different way, that I begin to experiment, be willing to try things, because my whole relationship, the way I approach something, has changed. So in closing, well, here's a quote I want to make sure that I put in there. So if you know the story of Paul going to Athens, and here's all the statues and everything out there, and so Paul goes to one that is to the unknown God and says some words, and I'm not reading the whole thing, but he concludes not with a quote from Jesus, but he concludes with a quote from some of their philosophers. And he says, "For in him we live and move and have our being." So this is from a Cretan philosopher. So Crete at that point in time, I think, was already well in the past. You know, so in him we live and move and have our being is not something that is unique to Christianity. It is an idea that has been around since humans began thinking about things like that. So in closing, so here's another quote. "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, that underlying reality, the evidence of things not seen." And again, I repeat, faith is not a vague process of believing in something. It is rather a positive act of turning on something. So it is a practice. Nobody is a great musician or a great athlete who gets to the peak and somebody looks at them and says, "Oh, now you can stop practicing." So we're constantly in that process of practicing. And here's 3 very short quotes, and I intended to make cards, and I will make them and have them for you at another time. So one which came in here: "I can because I am. I can because I am." And a phrase that has really impacted me this week: with ease and grace. I can because I am with ease and grace. Think about that. I don't have to struggle. I do it with ease and grace. Do it and you can do it. Just do it and you can do it. And if y'all reach out there and think there's a whole variety of quotes, first with Yoda: don't try, do. Do it and you can do it. And so it is.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on with the service. We're going to stand up and sing our next song, Peace in Our Lifetime Chant. One life, one love, one peace in our lifetime, one life at a time. One truth, one world, one peace in our lifetime, one life at a time. One life, one love, one life at a time. One